Welcome back. Today we are going to go over the DUNU Kima 2. So this one's been out for a little bit. I think other people have crawled through all the tips that you get with it, the other accessories that you get with it, the case, everything else that's in the box. The cable is one that DUNU has been using for a little bit. It's the one that is sleeved on the bottom, not sleeved on the top. It actually has pretty cool right angle 2-pin connectors, which is actually pretty cool, and you don't see that all that often. So kind of this version is kind of unique in that way. You do get the modular Q lock, so you do get 3.5, you do get 4.4 in the box. So I think you've seen all of those things before, so I'm not going to spend much time going over that. The shells themselves are metal. They are kind of metal solid. They do have this coating on it, so they're not really a fingerprint magnet, but you can kind of see that little coating to it makes it look, gives it a little bit of texture. This one says Trifecta, I think, Trifecta, and then over here, kind of faded in there, I think it does say the Eclipse dynamic driver, DUNU Eclipse dynamic driver. So that kind of gives you everything that you need to know what's on the inside. This is one of DUNU's very nice single dynamic drivers. The shell, again, I said metal, really nice. Accessory is all nice. The box is all nice. All this is all good, kind of what you would expect at the price point. And DUNU's history tells you that their accessory packages and what they put together in the box is actually always quite nice. So what is this one? Again, this one is their next generation DLC composite dome dynamic driver. Is this one a trifecta? Does it hit the, I would say this one's close, but does it hit all three on price, driver, and tuning? And I'll say again, and it's pretty close. The price and the driver, I think, are right on. I think this one hovers right around $100. Is it $120? I think $119, somewhere around there. I do think their driver, again, like I said, their DUNU's Eclipse dynamic driver. It's been used in a couple other sets. Always a really nice dynamic driver. But I would say that the driver is a little better than the tuning in this case. It's simply not DD tech limitation. The tuning plays a part. And this, like as I said, this one's been out for a little while. And I think the general consensus that I've seen mentioned more than a few times is people say it's not a technical set, not a leading technical set. It kind of sounds like a dynamic driver. You know, the techs are limited by the dynamic driver. And I think all of that comes across more in sound. I think the driver is actually better than that tuning. And I agree with when people say that, I definitely agree with it. But I will also say it's not a limitation of the driver. The driver is actually very nice, but the tuning played a part here. And I'll give you the nitpicking warning. Those of you who hate nitpicking, I will nitpick this one. And I'll say exactly what I said about the brain dance. So I praised this 10K value on the brain dance because it was almost exactly 5 dB underneath the mids. It added clarity, presence, and transparency to the mids. That is exactly the part that is missing on Kima 2. Kima 2 presents as less technical than others because there's a really full lower mids. This bass shelf is a full lower mid style bass shelf, and that gives you kind of a thicker midsection. You needed just a little bit more there to actually give you needed a little bit more 10K to sharpen, focus, add dynamics, and sound like you are in the room. And again, so where the 10K is, it's about -10 as opposed to -5. Again, that's not a perfect number. It doesn't always have to be -5. But in this particular case, you sort of hear there's kind of this is there, but it doesn't really carry over into the mids. And the mids do sound like they are less technical. They aren't as sharp as perhaps other dynamic drivers. And if you EQ this little bit and kind of push it up a little bit or push this little trough down a little bit, all of those things start to carry back over into the mids. And it does sound like a nicely technical, nicely sharp, focused, dynamic driver. So I nitpick it because it is a very nice set, and they did put it out at a really nice price, but it does need kind of a slight tweak to really sound like a top tier single dynamic driver. It is very close, and like I said, you can, as soon as you poke this in, you kind of hear it exactly the way it should be, and a lot of these nitpicks that other people have mentioned on this set kind of go away as soon as you can just push a little bit more detail into the mids from this point. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. So the sound, again, it's kind of a slight V. It's not a leaned out U shape. This is a very full sounding bass shelf. It is not dropped to the floor at 200 to give you those super clean mids. This is going to carry over some energy, some weight, some body right into your midsection. This is about 10K. This is about Harman style. So you are going to get a nicely energetic upper mid. And then this whole treble is going to kind of trail off just a slight bit early, like I said. So Harman target should be right about 5 dB underneath the mids. So this one just kind of comes off just a little bit early and drops a little bit lower. But the rest of this extension is actually quite kind of perfectly right on. On the volume, and again, this one kind of trails off just a little bit early, so this is not going to be a lower volume set. You are going to have to turn this one up. It isn't a treble forward set. It will sound very warm, very relaxed, and less technical at lower volume, so do turn the volume up. I am not a lower volume listener. I think lots of reviewers are reviewing this one at lower volume, and yes, I agree. It sounds much less technical. It sounds very warm, sounds very relaxed at lower volume. You do need to turn it up to make sure all these parts are heard and it sounds in balance the way it should. So the bass, again, yep, you can kind of look at this one. This one is a really nice arc, a nice linear bass shelf. Those of you who are fans of linear bass will get it. So why is this linear at 5 dB? And that's exactly because it would add to that nitpick I just mentioned. So at 5 dB, this adds a lot of weight, a lot of kind of body to the mids. If you had added any more to it, or if you had actually bumped up the sub bass to 10 dB, like what is popular, this whole thing would have been much more noticeable. It would have sounded even low res. It would have been really thick, kind of a bit muddy. So this is kind of the perfect bass shelf for this tuning, so I don't have any complaints on what they did. The bass shelf on this driver is for fullness and timbre. It's not going to rumble hard, it's not going to slam hard, but it will make the mids sound properly weighted with depth, but without the veiling of the extra sub bass, right? They kind of got this right at 5 dB. This isn't going to be a huge boosted sub bass set. Not really going to be veiling. It's not going to mask any of this stuff that's already a little bit lower. Think of it as a nice bass shelf on a nice vocal set. So the mids, even with the nitpicking, this little dip on the 10K, these are very nice, full, rich mids, very general appealing, very smooth. Lots of sets, you know, especially in 2024, they tended to boost the treble way out here. You got a huge upper treble boost. Some of them drop this down, you know, the mid bass down to at 200, put that on the floor. That gave you very clean mids. Kima doesn't do either of those things, and there really needed to be a slight boost right about here to really, you know, give you that definition and separation and presence on top of this full lower mids. And again, that's kind of the nitpicking, the part that I'm kind of complaining about is this is it's kind of a really thick, full bottom end. They really needed kind of this complementary bit that sat on top of it that really added that top end sparkle and dynamics and that sharpness that you're expecting to hear on a really top tier dynamic driver. And again, it's kind of there. It's just this is just a little bit low. So, but when you hear it that way, I think it is a standout 1DD at $120. You know, as I said, this thing is super close to being a standout set, but you know, as soon as you start hearing what everyone is talking about, this less technical bit, a lot of it does come down to this treble level, and just poking that back into it, it becomes quite a different set. So the treble, again, not all that far from Harman. This is about 10 dB, maybe it's about 9 dB. It's somewhere right around there. But it's on top of a fuller lower mid, so that's why it sounds better. It sounds smoother. The 3 to 6K downslope is perfect if you are a high volume person. So again, this is about 2K down through about 5 or 6K. I think that drops about 5 dB. That is the perfect downslope, so your instruments don't pop. You don't have this piercing high energy on guitars. Cymbals aren't over energetic. All this is nicely sloping down as it should. There's even a nice little dip at about 5K where it should be. So again, I think the treble is kind of right on. The 10K, as I said, is just a little bit low. But after that, this upper treble actually recovers quite nicely. And it does extend quite nicely. And it does give you the big stage. Again, all the pieces are here to be a standout, top tier, trifecta, getting everything right. And, you know, just this little bit would have made a huge difference on the sound. All the pieces are there. Just needed to have that extra bit of clarity to the mids as the stage is already nicely imaged and spacious. Just poke that in there into the mids, and again, this becomes a very nice set at a very reasonable price. Lots of nice accessories that you're expecting from DUNU, so I do think this is probably a set that I like more than others simply because I kind of spent a little bit of time and kind of figured out what was going on there. So as soon as I plug this one into my phone, I just, you know, push up 10K and go on my way and enjoy it, and it's a very nice single dynamic driver from DUNU. So thank you guys again for tuning in, and I'll see you next time.